morning here at the BASTA conference. Second day of the conference, and so many people came here to talk about artificial intelligence and prompt engineering. I am super happy to see so many faces that I know from this year and from previous years. My name is Rainer Stropik, and I am happy and looking forward to spending the morning together with you on OpenAI and a story about prompting. This session will be about prompt engineering for developers, and we will also take a look at a very interesting, let's say, experiment called TypeChat, and we will see how TypeChat can help. However, don't expect a full hour about TypeChat. We will slowly work our way towards TypeChat, explore various different techniques of prompting. We will take a look at the OpenAI API, say that 4 times in a row quickly behind. OpenAI API. We'll take a look at this API and see how it can help us to build intelligent applications. As I said, my name is Rainer Stropik. If you want to keep in touch with me, just look me up on, for instance, LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter, also known as X. You will probably find me, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or a direct message. Well, you know, at a conference like BASTA, you have to propose talks months in advance. And the real title, why I proposed this session months ago, was in fact a little bit different, because I could have called this session, "Oh, holy look at who's contributing." Do you recognize some of these names? Do you recognize them? Do you recognize them? They are contributing to TypeChat. And if I see these people contributing to a project, I'm immediately drawn to this project and I want to take a look. So we'll see whether this will be the next TypeScript or C#. Spoiler alert, no, it will not be a new programming language that you have to learn, but it is definitely a very interesting approach that we can either use directly or we can at least draw some ideas from it. So let's get started. What can we do with large language models? What can we do with systems like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and so on? Well, we can just have a relaxed chat with the machine. We can have a relaxed chat without a particular goal, just having a little bit of fun. For instance, I don't know what your taste in music is, but maybe we have some fans of death metal here in the room. Anybody death metal? Well, yeah, I see some hands going up. So what we could do, let me quickly copy that out and show you what I mean. We could, for instance, go to ChatGPT, let's do that, and have a quick, relaxed chat. Let's see if everything is set up correctly. Yes. And ask, "Hey, I'm bored. Let's have a discussion about whether death metal is music at all." Okay, don't throw things at me. I'm just having a chat with OpenAI, and OpenAI will now be very structured and tell me what arguments are there, that it is music, that it isn't music, what the differences are. Okay, that's fine. We all know that. We can do that. However, with prompt engineering, we can steer the AI in a certain direction. We can make it behave in a certain way. We can, for instance, let ChatGPT adopt a certain persona, either somebody who loves death metal or somebody who hates death metal. We can adjust the language, tell ChatGPT that it should describe death metal to a 6-year-old, which will be interesting by itself, but you can try it on your own if you want. We can avoid or allow certain response types, for instance, enumerations, first, second, third, or emojis. We can absolutely do that. And there are 2 different ways how we can influence that. That is the system prompt and the user prompt. Now let me show you a typical prompt. I will copy this one out, go here, and we will delete it again, create a new chat here, and this time I am going to go away. Okay, we will manage that. I am bored. Let's have a discussion about whether death metal is music at all. Take the role of a passionate death metal fan who could never understand why anybody would question that. Make your statements short and to the point. Do not use enumerations. You are allowed to use emojis. And then I can press enter, and you see the answer is now much shorter. We don't have the enumeration, we have some emojis, and that's a typical way of influencing ChatGPT. I have built numerous applications. I've built a story builder which is targeted at small kids. I have built some expert systems which support people, business people in certain situations, choosing some strategies and so on. This is a powerful concept on its own, but for us as developers, as we will see, it's of very limited use. Now, what's important when we talk about prompting is a very special kind of prompt, and that is the so-called system prompt, or as ChatGPT calls it, custom instructions. What we can do with custom instructions, we can tell the system to behave in a certain way, but we do not need to do it here in the user prompt. This is what we call a user prompt. We can go here, and here we have these custom instructions, as you can see it here. Later on, I will show you how you can control these custom instructions using the OpenAI API. So let's go into custom instructions, and here, first we can say, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? And here, we can simply say, you are a passionate death metal fan who could never, and so on and so on. You easily become angry if someone speaks poorly about death metal. Now, the second thing, what we can specify here in the custom instructions area, we can specify how we would like ChatGPT to respond. Make your statements short and to the point. Do not use enumerations. You are allowed to use emojis. Save this. Start a new chat, and now we can simply say something without instructing ChatGPT to behave in a certain way. I am bored. Let's have a discussion about whether death metal is music at all. Now, it tells us in a short and concise way that it's absolutely music. It uses emojis. I don't have enumerations, so you see, I don't see the custom instructions, the system prompt in my chat history anymore. That's a powerful concept, because that allows us to customize ChatGPT to a certain way. If you are a teacher and you would like students or young people to work with ChatGPT, with these system instructions, you can tell ChatGPT to adjust the language, to only answer questions in a certain direction and so on, and you don't see these limitations in your chat history. So if you share the chat history with this button up here, you do not see the custom instructions anymore, and that's a powerful concept by its own. Now, if we, let's have a little fun here. Now, if we copy-paste here, come on, compare Cannibal Corpse with Mozart. Mozart made music, Cannibal Corpse makes just noise. Now, if we send that one, different styles, different music, art is subjective. You see, short, concise. It's not very angry yet, but I could go on and it will become angry. Not extremely angry, because as you know, AIs are very, very polite, but still, I think you got the point. That's the idea of custom instructions or system prompts. Now, how can we do that as developers? You are here at a developer conference and you want to know about how this works as developers. Now, some of you might have never programmed against OpenAI using their API, and for them, I would like to spend the next few minutes introducing the core concepts of the API. For those of you who are already experienced OpenAI developers, please bear with me. In 5 minutes, we will continue with more advanced topics. Now, as you can see, we have a request, and the first thing that you send with a request through the API is the name of the modal that you would like to use. You could say, I want to use ChatGPT 4, I want to use ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, I want to use ChatGPT 4 but with a large number of tokens, 32,000 tokens for instance. This is the first parameter that you send. What is the model against which you want to program? This also determines the price, by the way. So the costs per token are influenced by the model that you choose. Next, let's make it a little bit larger here. Next, we send the history of messages. The OpenAI API works so that it is stateless. So you always have to send the entire chat history if you want the next statement from the assistant. You take the first message of the user, you also send the assistant, OpenAI, its own responses back. So OpenAI, at least currently, does not keep a database of what it has said. There is no history, it's stateless. You always send the entire chat history. And you have 4 different kinds of messages that you send. System messages, that's the system prompt or custom instruction that I was talking about a second ago. User messages, this is what the user has typed. Assisted messages, this is what OpenAI has generated. And functions, and we will definitely talk about functions in a second. Yeah, functions. And last but not least, options. You can define which options you want to have, the temperature, how repeatable the results should be, and things like that. Now you send all this up to OpenAI, and the response will be a new choice, or choices, plural, because you can tell OpenAI to not just send you back one option for a response message, but you can immediately ask for 5 options, and then you can choose. Okay? Last but not least, you see the usage, how many tokens were spent. That is important because maybe you want to do cost allocation or something like this. And in the case of Azure Open API, you get content filtering data. You get an indicator whether the message contains hate speech, explicit language and things like that, and you can, in your own application, for instance, deny the answer if the question or the answer contains explicit language or hate speech or whatever you want to do. Okay, that's an important one for the application developers. That should be enough, even for those in the room who have never programmed against this API. If you want to learn more, my slides, and I will publish them on LinkedIn, I think. So if you want to have them, just Google me on LinkedIn, or look me up on LinkedIn, and you can get the slides here. And here you see the links to the OpenAI API and the Azure OpenAI API. And this is an important one. I bet many here in the room, the typical BASTA visitors, you come from an enterprise background. So your company might be a little bit hesitant when it comes to using OpenAI because they are located in the US, you know what I mean. With Azure, things are different. Azure is a system built for businesses. You have data centers in the European Union. You have SLAs. You have data protection regulatory and things like that. And the good news is that you can simply deploy your OpenAI models in Azure with really just one click. Let me show you what I mean. I will bring up here the other browser that I have here, and I will go here. You see, you can deploy OpenAI here, Azure OpenAI resources in your Azure environment, and then you can open Azure OpenAI Studio, and if you want to have a certain model, like for instance, I don't know, ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo 16K tokens, you simply click on it, press deploy, and you get it. And the API that you use for programming against OpenAI and Azure OpenAI are nearly identical. So you can write the code once and you can seamlessly switch between OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. But be aware, you have to fill out an application form in order to get access to Azure OpenAI. Typically, you get granted access within a few hours, but only to ChatGPT 3.5. If you want to have ChatGPT 4 access, you have to fill in a second form, and this, in my experience, typically takes days to weeks, depending on the load on the system, and to be honest, also depending on your relationship with Microsoft. If you are a strategic customer, you might get earlier access than if you are a small ISV. But still, in a few weeks, I've always managed in the past when working with customers to get approved for ChatGPT 4 access in Azure. Okay, very good. So let's take a look at a concrete request on the wire. We are developers, so we want to see how it really goes. I've prepared something for you. Let me see, where do I have it? Yes, here I have it. This is a REST client in Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, this one runs against Azure OpenAI. You see, I'm using the complete model, the ChatGPT completing model in the version 4. You can always choose an API version. Microsoft is rolling out API versions roughly every month, and these APIs get new capabilities like, for instance, content filtering. Now, then you specify exactly that endpoint and you specify an API key that you can get from the Azure portal. If you are in an enterprise context where it's really important to look at security, yes, managed identity is supported. Yes, private endpoints are supported. So you can set up really elaborate network security systems around Azure OpenAI, which are not possible with OpenAI. So you have to choose which one suits you better. And here you see now the difference between the different prompts. Here you see the system prompt. This is what the ChatGPT UI calls custom instructions. Okay, this is what we entered in the custom instructions field, and here you can specify, okay, I am the user and this is what I say. Now I can run this endpoint. Oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. I wanted to click on that one. And that should give us, within a few seconds, a response. And the first that we see here in this response is the content filtering headers. As you can see it here, you can use them or you can ignore them, depending on your needs. And here you get the content. Are you serious? Death metal is music, end of discussion. Okay. That fits to our custom instructions, right? And again, you get the content filter for the response. Now, this is just one response. But if we want to respond something, we have to resend the entire chat history, as you can see it here. We have to resend the system prompt, resend the original question, resend the answer that the assistant gave us in the previous response, and also our new response. Come on, and so on, comparison with Mozart, and we can run it again, and let's see what ChatGPT says this time. Now it says, don't disrespect Cannibal Corpse. Their work is art, like Mozart. I think you can read the rest. You see, also the emoji is now a little bit more angry, fits very nicely to our custom instructions. So this is essentially how we can influence how ChatGPT answers. This is prompting basic. This is, at the end of the day, just chatting. Now, let's try to make the next step towards a system like TypeChat. Because, just chatting is kind of funny. For instance, we made an artificial intelligence installation for the Ars Electronica Festival, which is a large digital arts festival in Linz, my hometown. Tens of thousands of people from all over the world come to Linz and celebrate this festival, and in this AI installation we had a story creator where small kids, 6 years, 7 years and so on, could invent a story about truth, because the topic was who owns the truth. And for an application like that, that is just a nice chat, it was enough. But for many business applications, it's not enough. We need more. Now think about assistant systems. If we want to have, for instance, a shopping cart assistant, or an assistant solving a math problem, or an assistant for looking up a product in a complicated product database, such systems am I talking about. If we just use ChatGPT as it is, it's not very helpful in that regards. What we need is we need to write our own application. As you can see it here, this application replaces the ChatGPT UI and uses the OpenAI API in the background. This is what we essentially do. Now, the system prompt can already guide our users. Let me read a sample system prompt, which we can try in a second. You are a salesperson in a flower shop. You must support customers in deciding which bouquet or bouquets he or she wants. If the customer doesn't know which flowers he or she wants, help by asking for what they are buying the flowers for, ask for things like their favorite color, and then make suggestions. That would already be something useful for an assistant, but we go on. In your shop, you offer the following flowers: roses, lilies, gerberas, freesia, tulips, sunflowers in various colors. Now here we add structured information which might come from a database inside of our prompt. We build the prompt using an algorithm. Now I know what you are thinking. Hey Rainer, this is not practically relevant. Our corporate database of products consists 100,000 products with dozens, if not hundreds of properties. We cannot put them into the prompt because the size of the prompt is limited, as we all know. Yes, you are right. This approach is limited to certain application scenarios if you can limit the number of choices to a feasible amount. Okay? Yes, I know. If you want to know more, if you want to know how you can do a product search in a really complicated enterprise database, come to my next talk immediately after that one. There I will show you how to solve that problem. For now, let's say we are a pizza shop, we are a flower shop, we are an assistant with a limited number of choices. Last but not least, we can again add structured data to the prompt. Your pricing scheme, small bouquet for €15, that makes 3 flowers arranged with a little bit of green grass, and the rest you can read on your own. We have a medium bouquet with €25 and a large bouquet with €35. Okay, sounds good. This is what I already told you. Okay, that is my next talk. For now, just bear with me. We have limited choices. That's fine. Last but not least, we close the system prompt by telling the assistant to start the conversation by greeting the customer, welcome them, blah, blah, blah. Mention our slogan, let flowers draw a smile on your face, and ask them what they want. Wait for their response, and based on their response, ask further questions until you know what they want to order. Avoid enumerations, be friendly, avoid being overly excited, otherwise we are flooded with marketing speech, which at least in Europe we are not so much used to, maybe in the US, but not in Europe. If the customer asks anything unrelated to flowers, now this is an important one, tell the customer that you can only respond to flower-related questions. So if the flower assistant is asked whether death metal is music, it should not respond with its opinion. It should just say, I'm very sorry, I'm just a flower assistant. I have no idea about death metal. Okay? Otherwise, I mean, you can trick the system by asking it, what flowers should I give to a death metal fan? Maybe we get then some interesting answers, but I think you get the idea, right? Now let's take a look what happens if we use that system prompt. I don't want you to watch ChatGPT writing it down, so I created a sample conversation and stored it here, and let's take a look how this plays out. The user says, hi. Then ChatGPT said, hello and welcome to our flower shop. Our motto here is let flowers draw a smile on your face. How can I assist you today? Are you looking for a bouquet or perhaps something else? I am not sure what I'm looking for. I need something for our wedding anniversary. Wedding anniversary is a special occasion indeed. Congratulations. Congratulations. Blah, blah, blah. Which flowers do they particularly love, and so on. Well, don't you use red roses on such occasions? Yet I don't like the color red. Any other idea? Certainly it suggests something. Let's go for yellow. It's the 10th anniversary, so make it big. And at the end of the day, it comes up with a meaningful suggestion with a large bouquet, tells us the price, as you can see. We ask it to make suggestions for the flowers. It selects a combination of roses, lilies, and sunflowers, beautifully arranged, and it will summarize everything at the end. So you see, the assistant already did a pretty good job. We just took a system prompt, added a little bit of structured information, pricing, products, product properties, colors of the flowers. We gave it certain limitations and it worked fine. If we would ask the system, let's try that, let's continue the conversation, what do you think about death metal? Let's see. Switching gears a bit. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, the prompt is obviously not perfect. I would have to work on it, but you will see later on an example where it really works. Whatever. This is life, and ChatGPT is not always behaving as I would like it to do. Okay, maybe it thinks that death metal is related to flowers. Whatever. Next one. This time we want to do something else. We want to build an assistant which can write a program or a task list. You see, this one is an important one. You're a math teacher helping kids in elementary school to learn division. They have to divide large numbers by single-digit numbers. Describe step by step what they have to do in order to get to the result. We give it then, and that's important, one example, a single example. It already learns from this single example. That's training of large language models inside prompts. What we tell the system is we simply tell the system inside the prompt that it should divide 696 by 8. And we describe the strategy that we would like the elementary children to use in a table. The children should take the first digit, that's the 6 here, try to divide it by 8, which will result in 0 with a remainder of 6. We carry on the remainder of 6 and now we have the number 69. Again, we divide that by 8, we come to the result of 8 with a remainder of 5. We carry over this remainder, we divide by 8, this is 7, so the result, as you all might know, is 87. Okay? So we just train the system by giving it one example. And let me show you how this works. Again, I have prepared a conversation. This time I asked the system to give us an instruction on how to divide 15,735 divided by 3. And then it shows us pretty nicely that the result is 5,245. So ChatGPT was very, very good in deriving what we want from a single example. It's very good in splitting up a complex task into subtasks. That is what ChatGPT can do very greatly, but did you already see that one? It's not good in math. Because it calculated the result is 4,245, which is correct, and now it told us the result is 5,251. That's hallucination, that's rubbish, that's wrong. It simply is a stupid mistake. So ChatGPT is great in writing code, task lists, products. It can split a larger task into subtasks and tell us what it would do to come up with the solution, but it cannot execute these things very good. Of course, we can go down and say, hey guy, the steps are correct, but the given result is not. You didn't concat the numbers correctly. At least it is very, very nice to us and apologizes for its mistake. And it finds out that the result is 4,245. But an elementary school child would probably not recognize the mistake and would get a bad grade because it simply relied on ChatGPT. So that's not a good idea. Now, what is our conclusion? ChatGPT makes a lot of mistakes. But ChatGPT is good in writing programs, whatever that means. In this case, just describing a step-by-step algorithm. It doesn't need to be a program in a programming language. You shouldn't misunderstand me here. I'm talking just about an algorithmic approach to solve a certain problem. It could be order a pizza. Then it could say, okay, I would first look for a pizza shop. Then I would try to get the menu from the website. Then I would look through the menu and be a nice assistant for the user to choose a good pizza. Then I would call a pizzeria. I would say, I want this pizza, and so on and so on. You get the idea. So creating an algorithm, this is what it can do, but it's not good in math. It's not good in accessing the internet and things like that. So what we should do, and now listen closely, this brings us to the topic of TypeChat. What we should do is we should use ChatGPT for what it's really good for. Leading a customer through a certain process using natural language. Deriving steps, algorithms from a larger problem. This is what ChatGPT is really good for. But the math, looking up things in a database, storing things in a database, calculating prices and things like that, this is what we should do as developers. ChatGPT, at least now, is not very good. How can we do that? We now have a really core problem, and that is the problem that TypeChat tries to solve. We get text from ChatGPT through the API, but as a developer, we cannot really process the result. Because if we take a look at this flower shop stuff, ignore the death metal at the end, we now have a lot of text, but how to extract really what bouquet the customer wants? We need structured information, we need XML, we need JSON, we need something like that. Or here, it's nice to have a table, but it's really hard for us as developers to process this, to get this table out of the text mess that we have. We could parse it, we could look up the markdown content and try to identify the table. It would be a really complicated problem. So what we essentially need to do is we need to make ChatGPT deliver structured information to us through prompting. That is what we need, because we need to process what ChatGPT gives us. How can we do that? Well, a few months ago, when I was proposing this talk, this function that I'm going to talk about was not already there, so this is new. I added it to this talk a few weeks ago, and I would like to add it here. It was not in the program, but it is a very useful thing, and it directly relates to TypeChat. So this is a last week addition, if you want. Function calling. What is function calling? What are functions? Now, functions are a possibility to change the prompts in a very fundamental way. Functions are modeled in the ChatGPT API. What we essentially can do as developers, we can tell ChatGPT that we, as the host program, offer certain functions. Functions could be look up something in a database. Function could be call a web API. Function could be calculate something. Function could be whatever you want. It's any kind of function. Every function is characterized by a name, a description, and an argument. ChatGPT will then call these functions, but it cannot call the functions directly because ChatGPT doesn't know how to access our precious SQL Server database inside of our firewall. It only tells the host, hey host, I want to call this function, please do that for me and give me the result. So you as the host program, you recognize, ChatGPT wants me to call a function, I will do that, and I will deliver the result of the function call to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will then incorporate the result of this function call into its further flow of messages. So we can look up a product in a database. We can look up the price for a certain product. We can store something in a shopping cart. We can calculate a mathematical problem based on a certain function call. Now let's take a look. This time, to mix it a little bit, you will see a little bit of C# code. Because we're here at BASTA, we had pure REST, now we have C#, and we will close with Node.js and TypeScript. But first, we go to the flower shop here. This is a very simple example, and of course, my slides contain a link to this code, so you do not need to take a photo. You can simply look it up on GitHub. It's free. You can take a look at it. Now, here, the first stuff is very simple. We read some secrets here, which are the API keys and so on. And here we have our state. Please imagine that this is a database. Okay, this is the database of our digital shop, of our web shop, for instance. Now here we define the function. You see, function definition is a type which comes from a NuGet package called azure.ai.openai. Very nice NuGet package. The C# support for OpenAI API is very good. It's really, really very good. Now here we define that there is a certain function which we call add flower bouquet order item. Then we add a description where in prose text we are simply describing what this function is all about. In my case I said adds a flower bouquet order item. Must be called whenever the user has finished configuring a flower bouquet. Can be called multiple times for the same order if the user wants to order multiple bouquets. The method returns all bouquets that have been ordered so far. Isn't that awesome? Just by describing the function, ChatGPT will understand when in the whole discussion process it should call this function. And again, this can be retrieving data. This can be retrieving the state of a machine in your production plant. This can be writing data in a database, writing data through a web service. This can be performing some operations like math operations, executing custom business logic, which is very specific to your vertical, for instance. Something like that. Now the next that we have to describe is the data model of the arguments. That is essentially, as you can see it here, a JSON serializable object. It's any kind of object here, and we define that the arguments that ChatGPT has to give us is first the size of the bouquet, which can be small, medium, or large. ChatGPT does not have an elaborated data system, data type system. It simply says string. That must be fine for us. We want to have the price of the bouquet, this is that one, and then we have an array of flowers, as you can see it here. Each flower is again an object consisting of a flower type, rose, lily, gerbera, and so on, and an amount of the flower in the bouquet. And then we have to specify the required parameters, bouquet size and flowers. Just from this, ChatGPT knows which parameters it must be certain about. Because if it's not certain about these parameters, it cannot call our function. That's the whole idea here. Okay, very good. So let's start the conversation. For that, we have to specify the chat completion options. And the chat completion options is essentially this part here that you saw before. The chat completion options contain all these messages. The complete message history is in the chat completion options. We have a system prompt. In practice, this part might come from a database, or however you generate the choices that the user has. That's up to you. So we are building the prompt through an algorithm, like building a SQL statement. Okay? We all know how to build securely a SQL statement. And that is exactly what we see here, but now we don't build SQL statement, but we build prompts. Now scroll down a little bit, and the first message that our user says, hello. Just you entering a flower shop, you simply say, hello, and that is what we have. Now we have a loop. And by the way, sorry, I forgot something. In the chat completion options, we also specify the functions. So we do not just give ChatGPT the system prompt and the whole history of the conversation, but we also give it the available functions that it could call if it likes. Okay? Whenever it sees it useful, it will call the function. It will tell us to call the function. Now we can start with our conversation loop. In this case, here, we say, here, you see, the user can enter something. This flower symbol here represents the customer. Then we ask the customer for any message, and we add the message from the customer to our chat completion options. Next, we ask ChatGPT to do its magic. It's just a single method called getChatCompletionAsync. So we send the whole stuff over to ChatGPT and we get back one additional choice. Now, if this choice is a content, that means that the assistant simply wants to say something. Just text. In this case, it's very simple. We simply print the assistant's message, And we add the message to the history, because remember, we always have to send the entire history of the conversation back to the OpenAI API. That's an important one. However, it might also happen that our response from ChatGPT is not, say this, but it might happen that the response from ChatGPT is, call this function for me. That means that I should not print what ChatGPT said. ChatGPT asks me as the host, call this function. Okay, let's do that. In our simple example, I'm simply printing, for debug purposes, the name of the function that ChatGPT wants us to call. And here we have problems. Here the fun begins. Because as you all know, large language models tend to hallucinate things. And it might happen that you get a function call with a function name that doesn't exist. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. You can ask ChatGPT and say, hey ChatGPT, that's wrong, I don't know this function. And then it will probably apologize and say, oops, my bad, this is what I wanted to do. Of course, it depends which model you use. If you use ChatGPT 4, I have very rarely seen hallucinations with function names. If you use ChatGPT 3.5, it might happen more frequently. It depends on how much money you spend per request. The more money you spend, the less hallucinations you get. That's the story, okay? You have to choose yourself. Now, let's scroll down a little bit. In our case, we deserialize the parameters that we get from ChatGPT, and again we have a problem. It might happen that ChatGPT hallucinates parameters which aren't there. It might happen that ChatGPT gives us the wrong data types. That might happen. So in real life, this call here might crash. It might lead to an exception. That's not a good thing. For now, we assume that everything is fine because ChatGPT 4 is quite intelligent. So currently we are in this very simple application. We are simply, where do I do it? Somewhere I add the bouquet to the list of bouquets. Do I do that? Somewhere I should. Here, of course, here it is. Here is a warning. Let's get rid of this warning. Ordered bouquets.add, this would be inserting the order in the database, and at the end of the day we add the response from the function call, the entire shopping cart where all the bouquets that we have ordered so far are inside of it. We simply add that to the message history and we repeat with the next iteration of the loop. And that's it. That's our program. Here we have the data structure which we internally use, and we will talk about that in a second. Now let's run this thing, .NET run, and let's try to order some flowers. I hope that internet is working, but I'm pretty sure it will. So let's say, hello, I am looking for flowers for my wedding anniversary. Okay, let's see what the robot will tell us. That's wonderful! Celebrating a wedding anniversary with flowers is a beautiful gesture. Do you have certain type or colors of flowers? I want red roses. Okay, let's see what it's going to say. Great, red roses, blah blah blah. Which choice of bouquet do you want? Small, medium or large? I will make it now pretty simple. I will simply say a medium one. And let's see what the robot now does. See, this is exactly what I wanted you to demonstrate. Now, in that situation, ChatGPT recognized that it has enough information to store the data in our database. It gives us a nicely formatted JSON. It says the bouquet size is medium, the price is 25, the flowers are roses, and the amount is 5, because this is the structured information that we added to the system prompt. And now, you see, we could go on and add a second bouquet. I think you got the point, right? Good? I think this function calling thing is awesome. I've used it in numerous projects. I've been doing customer projects with OpenAI over the last months, and it works really like a charm. But we have problems. First, the API isn't as trivial as it seems when you add streaming. You know from ChatGPT, when you work with it, you do not have to wait for a minute to get one response, but you see word by word by word, phrase by phrase by phrase. That is called streaming. Behind the scenes, it's using server-sent events, SSEs, and using this SSE protocol and then working that up with your own custom website isn't the simplest thing on earth, and especially if you combine it with function calling, it's not trivial. It needs a little bit of algorithm thinking, but I'm pretty sure you will make it. We have, and that's the most important problem, we have duplicate modal information. See, if we take a look, we have, oh, I need the code again, we have the schema information of our data here in the call of the OpenAI API. We need to specify the schema here with this API from OpenAI. If I scroll down a little bit, we have the entire schema here again, where we specify our possibilities inside of our prompt. Again, duplicated schema. If I scroll down again, I have in C# here my flowers and my bouquets. Again, duplicated schema. So we have to come up with the same schema information over and over again, and that's not beautiful. That obviously can lead to inconsistencies. And additionally, if we specify the modal in prose in a system prompt, it might lead to ChatGPT hallucination, and at the end we also have the problem, I mentioned it before, that ChatGPT might hallucinate in delivering us invalid JSON. How can we deal with that? Enter TypeChat. That was now a long introduction until we came to TypeChat. But it was necessary, wasn't it? If I don't describe these problems, you don't understand why TypeChat exists. TypeChat exists to solve exactly that problems. The problem is we want to build an assistant where the response should be processed by a machine, by our algorithms, so we need structured responses. The next problem is we need to specify a schema so that ChatGPT and we can agree on a certain schema about the structured information. We need to limit the choices, the data which comes maybe from a database or something like this. This is also something that we have to do, and TypeChat is an approach that tries to solve exactly that problem. Let's take a look how TypeChat solves that. Now let's talk a little bit about what TypeChat is. TypeChat is at its core the idea to use the TypeScript type system for prompting. So we write TypeScript types, type hierarchies, interfaces, types, data types and things like that, and use that TypeScript schema information as our prompt. You will see how that works in a second. The schema expresses the possible intentions like buy flowers or store flowers in shopping cart or look for a free space in my calendar or book an appointment or call the pizza shop. I think you get the idea. We are in fact limited to a certain degree because we can only express a schema that TypeScript is able to handle. That's in the nature of this idea because we use the TypeScript type system for that. TypeChat is not just an idea but also a small, tiny, teeny little library. It's not a big thing. And this library contains very useful APIs with which I can give the schema to a library function and it will translate it automatically into a prompt. And when ChatGPT responds, it contains correction mechanism to verify whether the JSON that we get back follows this schema, and if not, it automatically asks ChatGPT to do corrections. I think you get the idea, right? Or semi-automatically, let's do it that way. The whole TypeChat is written in TypeScript, so you need Node.js npm, and you need to write TypeScript and JavaScript. Don't get me wrong, TypeChat is a small library. You can easily read and understand in 2 or 3 hours. The entire code base. It consists of, I don't know, 10 TypeScript files or something like this. It's really a small project. It cannot be compared at all with TypeScript or something else. It's really just an idea. And it's by far not ready for production. It's an idea, it's a concept, and we can either use it directly, benefit from it, or just take the idea and incorporate it in our own applications. This one, the last one, is a very important limitation. TypeChat is limited to commands, not chats. So TypeChat, I personally think that the name is a little bit misleading because it's not about chatting. It's more about yeah, something like Siri. Hey Siri, turn on the light. Turn on the light. This is something that we want to handle. Hello, I don't know, hey Google, I don't know, open up the door or whatever. If I want to control the smart sensor or open Word or whatever, I think you get the idea. Commands like that is what TypeChat is really good at. TypeChat, unfortunately, by itself is not capable of handling more elaborate chat situations like in our flower shop. Of course, we can write our own code around TypeChat to use it in a scenario like our flower shop, but I'm not sure whether it offers enough information, enough added value for me that I would use it in that situation. So if you simply want to have either a speech-to-text based user interface where somebody who stands in front of a machine should control the machine by saying commands, and you want to analyze these commands, you can use TypeChat. This is a scenario that you can definitely do, and I will show you that in a second. Let's take a look at a calendar example. And I would like to show you this in here. In this example here. This is TypeChat. Let me quickly show you the entire source code. It's really not complicated. The entire source code is that. So that is TypeChat. Yeah, so it's not big. It's absolutely not big. You can definitely take a look at the source code. As I said, it's just an idea. But it's an idea created by very bright minds. So there must be something behind it. And of course, we just created or followed their train of thoughts in the last 45 minutes or so. Now let's take a look at two examples. This is what I would like to show you. They are examples that you can read up in the documentation and in the GitHub repository of TypeChat. The first one, oh no, I wanted the calendar here, is the calendar example. Let me show you how this calendar example works. First, we need to take a look at the schema. This is schema information. As you can see, our so-called intents, so what can the user do with our bot, are expressed in TypeScript type system. We have a type, which are actions, and they, here, contain the possible operations. These are the intents. Add event, remove event, add participant, change time, change description, find events, and unknown. If the user said something which does not fit into any of the other buckets, unknown is a good choice because then we can do something with it. If I scroll down, then we get a lot of detailed information. For instance, if I look at the find events action, we see an action type, which is just a string. TypeScript supports that. This is just one option. This is a string with a defined content. And then here we have a subtype. Here, event reference, which has an optional day, an optional day range, an optional time range, a description, a location, and participants. And please note that it's important that we have these comments here, because ChatGPT will of course understand the comments too. It's not just limited to the TypeScript types. So that is the schema. Do you see the difference compared to our flower shop? There we had the schema, the roses, the colors, the prices. We had it in prose text, in markdown at the end of the day. Here, we do not need to write it twice, because this is TypeScript, and ChatGPT can understand this TypeScript schema, and we can immediately use the TypeScript schema in our own code. So we do no longer need to duplicate schema information. That's the idea. Could you build something similar with a C# data type hierarchy? Of course. Why not build C# chat if you want? It is definitely feasible. Why not? Now let's take a look at the code itself. It's really simple. It's not complicated at all. If I scroll down a little bit, you see here we ask the user for a certain input, and here you see a call to TypeChat. This call to TypeChat takes here in the method translate the request of the user, and the response, as you can see here, is a calendar action. And that's the idea. That's what I want you to take away from this talk. We take the schema and put it in the prompt, and we reuse the same schema in our code. No more duplicated screener information. That's the whole point. Well, and then we can do something with it. I think you get the point. The rest is just TypeScript. Nothing special here. Now let's take a look at the prompt. How does this prompt look like? So, I will zoom in, don't worry. The beginning looks like that. You are a service that translates user requests into JSON object of type calendar actions according to the following TypeScript definition. See, this is the TypeScript schema. We simply add the TypeScript schema to the system prompt and tell ChatGPT to build its response based on this TypeScript schema. And then, if I scroll down, we pass in, oops, let me go further, here it is, then we pass in the request of the user. The user may be said, through a microphone, search for any meetings with Gavin this week. And then ChatGPT will try to derive the intent, find calendar. It will derive the filter criteria, participant Gavin. It will derive the time constraint this week. And it will build a JSON which follows the schema, the TypeScript schema that we have specified in the system prompt. That's the whole idea. And then we can simply validate it and print it on the screen. That's the idea. And what we get back is a piece of JSON, as you can see it here, which is find events, day range is this week, and participants is Gavin. And I think in this room, I do not need to describe anybody how to process that. Now it's your job as developers. Take this JSON and do something with it. Apply it to your business logic in your application, whatever you want to do. That's simple. And that's the idea of TypeChat. Second example, a math example. That's also an interesting one, because what TypeChat also contains is the possibility to let ChatGPT write abstract programs. What you can essentially do is you can tell ChatGPT that it should write a program in a domain-specific programming language based on a certain task. In this case, it says there is a program which consists solely of function calls. Every function call has a function name, and every function receives an arbitrary list of expressions. So we define a domain-specific language inside the prompt. Next, we specify, as you can see here, all the different function calls which are available inside of our domain-specific language. In this case, add, subtract, multiply, divide, and so on. And then we simply, last step, throw in the puzzle. Can you remember the math exercise that I told you before? We simply throw in this one. And now ChatGPT is intelligent enough to see, oh, there is a multiplication, I have to do multiplications before additions, so the first statement in the generated program will be mult, and this will contain 2 and 3. The result will be given to an add, and I think you get the idea, right? And then we have another add, and you think you get the idea. So it will generate a domain-specific program. And the good news is that TypeChat contains a dedicated API which you can give a callback whenever it comes up with a function call that it doesn't know. And therefore, you have a kind of domain-specific program generator where you define the exit points where you can do some more complicated operations. At the end of the day, what we do here is we do exactly, we avoid the problem that I showed you in the math exercise. We let ChatGPT derive the algorithm, but we don't let it do the math. The math is done by us, but ChatGPT comes up with the steps. And with that, we get the best of both worlds. And TypeChat supports exactly that. There is a dedicated example which is called math. You can take a look at the code. It's just a few dozen lines of code. I'm absolutely sure that you will find your way through it. So what? First, learn prompting. You did the first step. You learned about system prompts and user prompts, and I showed you various techniques how you can work with that, but that's just the start. Just as you learned SQL in the past, now you have to learn prompting. Now, there are people out there who call themselves prompt engineers, and they have a lot of experience. It's not a trivial thing. If you think prompting is trivial, it's not. It's just like if you take a look at SQL and you say, select star from products, oh, now I'm a SQL expert. As we all know, that's not true. Same is true with prompting. If you entered 2 prompts in ChatGPT, you are not a prompt engineer. Learn prompting. How? Do it, exercise with it, start embedding it in your program. Now, is TypeChat the next language from Anders Heisberg? I learned C# and I made a living out of it. I learned TypeScript and I made a living out of it. Will I learn now TypeChat and make a living out of it? I can't see that yet. Maybe it develops to something awesome, but currently TypeChat is not a language. It's an experiment, it's a first step, it might be useful for certain scenarios, but at the end of the day, it's very limited as of now. But let TypeChat be an inspiration for your own solutions, and that is exactly what I wanted to show you in this talk. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your attention. I hope you learned something. This session was recorded. You can find it on YouTube. If you can't find the YouTube link, please let me know. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name. I'm pretty sure you will find me. I'm looking very much forward to receive your feedback on this session. Thank you very much. Enjoy BASTA. And if you want to learn more about OpenAI API and structured data and so on, I will do a follow-up session exactly in this room in half an hour where we again talk about the topic of prompting, but in a very different concept, in a very different context. Thank you.